Humans thought they had subjugated nature. But every cage, every concrete wall, every chain was broken one day and came back to haunt us. These bloody stories bear the mark not only of animals, but also of us humans who brought them to this state.
1. USA Orca Attack. Down Branch OS Last Day, February 24, 2010. February 24, 2010.
What began as a routine day at SeaWorld Orlando's show pool in Florida turned into a bloody tragedy within minutes. Dawn Brancho, a 40-year-old trainer and one of the park's most experienced instructors, interacted with the 5-ton killer whale Tilikum after their routine training session, as she had done thousands of times before. But that day was different. Tilikum suddenly grabbed Dawn by the hair and dragged her to the bottom of the pool. Held underwater for 22 minutes in front of spectators, the young woman suffered severe traumatic injuries. Her spine was broken, her ribs were shattered, her left arm was severed, and she suffered severe crushing injuries to her skull. The cause of death was listed in the official report as traumatic injury and drowning. This incident was not just a death, but a turning point. It was known that Tilikum had been involved in 2 previous fatal incidents. However, SeaWorld had concealed this fact from the public for commercial gain.
Branch OS Des exposed the darkness behind the multi-million-dollar entertainment industry. 2. USA Alligator Attack. Cynthia Diekemaestre HD, Mai 6, 2025.
On May 6, 2025, an incident in Florida's wilderness at Lake Kissimmee State Park once again demonstrated how sudden and deadly alligator attacks can be. 61-year-old Cynthia Diekma was canoeing with her husband. The weather was calm, the lake almost silent. But this silence was a sign of a giant alligator lurking in the depths. The canoe suddenly lost its balance in a shallow part of the lake and capsized. The moment Cynthia fell into the water, the alligator attacked like lightning. Her husband tried with all his might to save her, but the alligator performed a deadly spin known as the death roll, dragging Cynthia into the depths of the water. Rescue teams arriving at the scene found her body hours later. Cynthia's lifeless body was torn apart. The 3.5-meter-long alligator was caught shortly afterward and removed from the area. However, the events of that day served as a reminder that humans can become prey at any moment in Florida's natural environment. Cynthia's husband stated in his statement, "I tried to hold her, but the alligator was stronger. She disappeared before my eyes."
3. Australia White Shark Attack. Frank Camates Final Moment, Mai 31, 2024.
On the morning of May 31, 2024, the wind was blowing gently and the waves were breaking calmly off the coast of Streaky Bay, South Australia. 53-year-old experienced surfer Frank Kamata took his board and headed out to sea, as he did every day. But within minutes, this routine would turn into one of the bloodiest sea attacks in Australian history. The great white shark was silently circling in the depths, waiting for the right moment. According to eyewitness accounts, the giant shadow suddenly burst to the surface and slammed into Frank's board with terrifying force. A large piece of the surfboard broke off. At the same moment, the water turned red. Frank thrashed about, his blood mixing with the waves, as onlookers watched in panic. His friends rushed to help, but they couldn't keep up with the shark's speed. By the time rescue teams arrived at the scene, Frank had already disappeared. Hours later, his mangled body was found. The giant teeth marks left on his board proved the magnitude of the attack. The local press reported on the incident for days. 4. Netherlands, Gorilla Escapes, Bokito's Night of Panic, May 18, 2007. On the morning of May 18, 2007, Rotterdam Zoo in the Netherlands became the scene of a night of panic that went down in European history. Bokito, a 200-pound western lowland gorilla, was the most popular animal in his enclosure, where he had been displayed behind glass to visitors for years. There was a woman who constantly watched him and visited him frequently. She made eye contact with Bokito, smiled, and seemed to believe there was a special bond between them. However, according to experts, prolonged eye contact for gorillas is not a sign of friendship, but a direct challenge. That day, Bokito managed to escape from his cage. First, he crossed the 3.5-meter-wide moat and then headed straight for the woman he had his eye on. In an instant, he grabbed her, threw her to the ground, and began dragging her. The woman's face and body were torn apart. She survived with over 100 bite marks, broken bones, and severe injuries. The panic didn't end there. Bokito entered the zoo's cafe, and visitors fled screaming. Tables and chairs were overturned, and chaos ensued as people tried to get outside.
5. USA, Tiger Attack. Tatiana's Bloody Night, December 25, 2007. December 25, 2007.
On Christmas Eve, the San Francisco Zoo was bustling with holiday cheer. However, that night, Tatiana, a 350-pound Siberian tiger, would become the protagonist of a horrific attack that would go down in history. Tatiana, who was thought to be unable to escape her cage surrounded by 4-meter-high concrete walls, managed to overcome the obstacle. She first attacked 17-year-old Carlos Souza Jr., killing him in a horrific manner. Paul and Culber Dhaliwal, brothers standing nearby, were also seriously injured. Screams echoed throughout the zoo, and visitors fled in panic. When the police arrived, Tatiana was still attacking. The animal could only be stopped by shooting it. After the investigation, a horrific truth emerged. The enclosure Tatiana was in was 1 meter lower than the USDA safety standards. In other words, this deadly incident was not only the result of the animal's strength but also of negligence. The tragic death of Carlos Souza Jr. led to questions about safety measures in zoos. Tatiana's bloody night turned the joy of Christmas into darkness for the entire city and became a symbol of the disaster that occurs when a natural killer and human negligence combine. 6. Canada, Grizzly Bear Attack, Banff, September 29, 2023. On September 29, 2023, an incident in the heart of nature at Banff, one of Canada's most famous national parks, plunged the country into deep shock. Doug Inglis, 62, and his wife Jenny Gus, 62, had set up camp in Red Deer Valley with their dog for an autumn hike. Nature was a source of peace and adventure for them. However, late at night, a large shadow appeared near their tent. That shadow belonged to a grizzly bear weighing over 300 pounds.
The animal suddenly attacked.
The thin fabric of the tent offered no protection against the massive claws. Screams and the dog's barking pierced the forest silence, but no help came. Doug and Jenny suffered fatal injuries in a short time. Their dog also lost its life in the attack. When rescue teams arrived in the morning, the scene was horrific. The tent was torn apart, belongings scattered, and 2 bodies lay on the ground. This went down as the deadliest bear attack in Banff in decades. Experts noted that the bear may have approached the camp in search of food. However, this tragedy showed that in the wild, the rules are always in the hands of the animals. 7. Canada, Polar Bear Attack, Nunavut, August 2024. An incident in August 2024 in Canada's cold and desolate Nunavut region reminded the world just how dangerous polar bears can be. One of the workers at a small logistics base on Brevoort Island stepped outside during the night shift, where the only sound breaking the silence was the howling wind. But soon after, 2 polar bears emerged from the darkness. Hungry and aggressive, these giant animals targeted the young man. Witnesses said he tried to defend himself by waving his flashlight and shouting, but within seconds, the bears pounced on him. His cries for help echoed through the camp, but no one came to his aid. The man was mauled to death at the scene. By morning, rescue teams had reached the scene. The sight was horrifying, blood trails stretched for miles across the snow, and the campsite was in chaos. After the incident, hunters shot the 2 bears. However, this was just one example of the increasing human polar bear conflicts in the region.
8. India, Elephant Attack, The Death of Badur Kisku, June 2022.
In June 2022, the Sahibganj region of India's Jharkhand state witnessed an unforgettable event. 65-year-old farmer Bahadur Kisku was doing his daily work in his field. As villagers went about their usual lives under the summer heat, a herd of elephants emerged from the forest and marched toward the village. It was yet another example of the increasingly frequent human-elephant conflicts. A giant elephant separated from the herd and headed towards Bahadur. Eyewitnesses said the elephant grabbed Bahadur with its trunk, threw him several meters into the air, and then trampled him repeatedly under its feet as he fell to the ground. Bahadur died at the scene. What made the tragedy even more horrific was what happened next. While villagers were preparing the funeral, the same elephant returned. This time, its target was Bahadur's coffin. It tore the coffin apart with its trunk, causing the villagers to scatter in panic. Those moments were recorded on villagers' cell phones and quickly spread around the world. Experts say that elephants can remember traumatic events in particular and can act out of a desire for revenge. Bahadur Kisku's death and the subsequent attack on his funeral proved how thin the line between humans and the wild is. and that we can never know when or how that line will be crossed. 9. Egypt, shark attack, the death of Vladimir Popov, June 2023. In June 2023, the Egyptian tourist city of Hurghada woke up to a terrifying day in the sparkling waters of the Red Sea. Vladimir Popov, a 23-year-old Russian citizen, had swum just a few meters from the shore. Tourists were sunbathing, some enjoying the water.
Suddenly, a shadow rose from the depth.
The tiger shark approached silently and attacked abruptly. Popov struggled to escape, but the animal was too powerful. Witnesses heard his helpless screams. Within seconds, the sea turned red. The shocking aspect of the attack was that those moments were recorded on cell phones. In these images posted on social media, Popov's struggle, people's panicked screams, and the blood-filled water are seen in all their reality. After the incident, the beaches in the area were immediately closed, and Egyptian authorities hunted down the shark. However, the fact that Vladimir's final moments were recorded made the tragedy even more devastating. The death of the young man, who had come to the Red Sea on vacation, was a major blow to tourism in the region. 10. India, wolf attacks, Baraic, September 2024. In September 2024, the Baraic region in India's Uttar Pradesh state was shaken by a historic atrocity. After months of mysterious attacks, the horrific truth emerged. A pack of wolves was targeting villages and killing children in particular. Most attacks occurred at night and were easily carried out because homes had no doors or defenses. Villagers heard the wolves howling at night, but in the early morning, they found bloody trails and mangled bodies in the streets. 10 people, most of them children, lost their lives in these attacks. More than 30 others were injured. It was reported that children were dragged from their beds and taken away, leaving their families helpless and in tears. The Indian government launched a special operation called Operation Badia. Villages were protected with thermal cameras, traps, and armed patrols. Although some wolves were captured, the entire pack could not be eliminated. This incident showed how deadly the conflict between humans and wildlife can be in rural areas of India. 11. India, leopard attack, Mayank's death, July 2025. In July 2025, the Mundavar region of Uttar Pradesh state in India witnessed a heartbreaking tragedy. Little Mayank, just 18 months old, was playing in front of his home. While the village children laughed and played in the summer heat, a shadow silently approached from the depths of the forest. This shadow belonged to a hungry and bold leopard. The animal suddenly pounced, grabbed the little boy, and dragged him away into the darkness before his mother's eyes. The mother's screams echoed throughout the village, and villagers chased after it with sticks in their hands. However, the leopard was very fast, and the child was soon lost from sight. After hours of searching, Mayank's lifeless body was found torn apart. This was not the only case in the region. Over the past 2.5 years, more than 30 similar attacks have been reported. Villagers slept in fear every night, not daring to let their children go outside. Authorities say there are more than 500 leopards living in the area and that they are increasingly encroaching on human habitats.